Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? This is John Dingfelder, and you are listening to Down and Dirty on WMNF in Tampa. Good morning, Skip.
Hey, good morning, John.
How's it going?
It is great. Other than a little wet
Good.
out there.
A little wet out there. Skip's joining us, helping us with the board. We've got somebody answering the phones. Didn't catch the name, but I appreciate the help. And this morning, I am thrilled to have some fantastic guests on. Last year, I had on Judge Michael Shanti, and he's joined us again to celebrate belatedly Memorial Day, but as we're coming into July 4th, here we are again. Good morning, Judge Shanti.
Good morning, John.
How you doing?
I'm doing outstanding. Pleasure to be here.
For the next hour, I just might call you Michael, but
please do. And with us as well
is Colonel DJ Reyes, who is a very good friend of the court and a friend of ours. And what we're going to talk about today is something that's near and dear to really all three of us, but especially these two gentlemen. Veterans Treatment Court in Hillsborough County. But I just want to clarify, because we do cover many counties. Veterans Court is probably in most every county now, isn't it?
It's a great question. Yeah, in 2021, the legislature mandated that every circuit have a Veterans Treatment Court. And Colonel Reyes can probably speak to the broader outreach of these courts, but we have over, 600?
We have over 625 nationwide, and we currently have 34 VTCs or dockets in the Sunshine State.
Yeah, wow. So it really has taken sail, and we're all over the country now.
And Colonel Reyes, that would include, I'm sure, Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando, Polk.
Absolutely, and in fact, I'm actually working actively with several judges right now who have asked for some advice, and especially on the mentoring program, which we'll talk about later. But I've been dealing with Judge Kimberly Todd across the bridge, and Judge Mose Floyd out in Jacksonville, Duval County, and Alicia Latimer in Orlando.
No, we're keeping you busy. Well, let's back up a few minutes and let's advise and tell the people what Veterans Court Treatment Court really is and where it came from and that sort of thing. Michael?
Sure. Delighted. So for your listeners, they probably should be aware that a judge up in Buffalo, New York, started seeing a trend of criminal defendants that was appearing in front of him. Veterans that were coming back struggling with mental illness, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use
And that's
disorders.
been a good, 20 years?
In 2008 is when it was kind of noticed, and he sought fit to kind of create a Veterans Treatment Court up in Buffalo. And then, of course, the word spread. And in 2013, a colleague of mine, Judge Richard Weiss, Lieutenant Colonel Weiss at the time, he reached out to Colonel Reyes and wanted to set up a similar court here in Hillsborough County. And in fact, he did. At the time, I was over in Afghanistan, but Judge Weiss and I are friends, and I was learning about this program as I myself was in Afghanistan. A few years later, in 2015.
But going to Afghanistan, Michael, I mean, we had a big upsurge of folks who had served in Iraq. You had served in Iraq.
Yeah.
Saw a lot of action over there, and I'm sure there's a lot of trauma related to that action in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Absolutely, and in years past. So Colonel Reyes and I both served in Operation Iraqi Freedom, but to your larger point, we assist veterans who have served in the Vietnam conflict, who have served in operations, many of which are classified, but yet they come back with a lot of trauma. And quite frankly, many of our veterans have never served in combat, and that's okay. But they still struggle with mental health related issues, post-traumatic stress, MST or military sexual trauma. They have substance use disorders, whether they've served in combat or not. But getting back to the other question, in 2013, this court was established. And then in 2015, it was expanded. The legislature expanded to allow for felony criminal offenses to come into the program. And Judge Holder, now retired, but a colonel in the United States Air Force, he then took over the reins from Judge Weiss and saw that through for a couple of years, and in 2017 is when I took over, and I've been overseeing the program ever since. Colonel Reyes, of course, was instrumental in setting up the Mentor Corps, which, quite frankly, is the glue that keeps this all together, because there's only so many things that courts and attorneys can do in that courtroom. But Colonel Reyes and his fellow mentors, they're able to connect a lot of dots, and I'll let Colonel Reyes speak to that as questions roll. But the Mentor Corps is such a special component of the success of our program.
Colonel DJ Reyes, you've sort of become a legend in this field. But how did you wander into there? Were you still active active military at the time when you got involved with Judge Weiss?
So in April 1st, 2013, I retired. I did a little over 33 years active duty.
Thank you.
And did my last Afghanistan deployment, came back to SOCOM headquarters and retired out there. And so that was April of 2013. In August of 2013, I was watching late at night with my wife an ABC 2020 special on this wonderful court that was being held in Harris County, Texas. Very big county.
Is that
actually.
Houston,
right?
Yeah.
Yes, in Houston. And what caught me were a couple things. One, the nature of this court. Even though it was a criminal court, it was not focused on punishment. It was focused on underlying conditions that you're trying to understand with veterans who were coming back, oftentimes from combat.
So it's non-adversarial proceedings, right?
Absolutely.
What's the alternative? I read it last night. If it's just cooperative. Collaborative. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing that caught my eye was the judge himself was an active SJA, staff judge advocate in the U.S. Army Reserve. And I thought that was just wonderful. It just caught my attention. And I told my wife, I said, I have to find out if we have one of these things, because I was looking, like many of our veterans, especially those who transition out or retire, you take the uniform off, but you really don't take the service off.
Sure.
And you're
33 years of your life, yeah.
Right. And you're so used to serving. And now I saw an opportunity to serve and to give back to my community, as we like to say in the Army, make your foxhole better every single day.
Nice.
And so I reached out to a very good friend, a gentleman at the time he was a lawyer with Ogden and Sullivan. His name was Louis Vieira.
Okay.
And I said, Louis, you know everybody here. Find out if we have one. He calls me back the next day and he said, hey, I got great news for you. I found the judge that's trying to set it up right now. His name is Richard Weiss. So I set up an appointment with you. So I went in to see the judge. And
well, what timing was that? I mean, that's amazing. Yeah.
Serendipity. But 20 minutes turned into 3 hours. But the most impactful thing that happened out of that was, as he was talking to me and describing the court, I look at his credenza, and of his many military accomplishments and certificates, I noticed a very similar certificate with a boss that I worked for.
Wow.
At the same time that I noted on his certificate in 2007, 2008.
So you guys were under the same general or something, right?
Yeah, I was OPCON, operational control to this judge that he was actually a military magistrate for. Mm-hmm. But the way we connected was I was running certain operations in which I was identifying and bringing malign actors and detainees to his forum, where he could then adjudicate what type of category of person this was.
So you were used to the courtroom scenario because you were in the JAG world, right?
Well, being in the military, right, mm-hmm. And being a former commander, you have a tendency to understand the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I felt very comfortable with that. But once I realized the judge was adjudicating the very detainees I was bringing over, that's when the light bulb went off. And I said, Judge, this was meant to be. We have to work together. And I'll never forget what the judge said to me. This is what he said. He said, DJ, I'm trying to stand this court up. I don't have a judicial administrative order. I'm in the middle of writing it. I don't have a staff. I don't have a budget. And I certainly don't have any mentors. And I've been told by Judge Russell that they're the secret sauce of the whole court.
Nice.
So having said all of that, would you be willing to entertain joining me to see if we can help set this court up? And so it took me a New York minute, and I said, of course. And he said, now, are you sure you want to do this? Because I can't pay you. And I told him, I'm not here for a job.
Sure.
I'm here for a cause. And that was in August of 2013. 1 October 2013 was the first judicial administrative order.
Last year, 10 years. Huh?
And last year, Judge Shanti and I and our team celebrated its 10th anniversary since the founding of our
seems like longer because it's so well established and so well respected. Right. If you're tuning in, you're listening to WMNF. I'm John Dingfelder. This show is Down and Dirty, and today we're not so down and dirty, but we're talking to our two good friends, Judge Michael Shanti and Colonel DJ Reyes. And these gentlemen are very instrumental in Hillsborough County Veterans Court. If you want to participate and join the conversation, the call-in studio line is 813-239-9663. We will take your calls. Give us a shout. So, let's talk about mentoring a little bit. Judge Michael, how important are the mentors? No, you know what? I want to back up for a second. Let's talk about qualifying, because I'm sure our listeners out there probably know somebody. They know a veteran. Maybe they know a veteran who's been in a little trouble. You say originally this just started out as misdemeanors. Now it includes, I think, at least third-degree felonies and nonviolent felonies, non-sexual felonies. I looked at that long list last night.
Yeah, that's accurate. In 2017, 2015, the administrative order kind of expanded the what was eligible to be to enter the program, and so that's when Judge Holder took over. So you're correct. Third-degree felonies or any nonviolent second-degree felonies or any misdemeanor offenses. So
right. So they have to be military or military-related. I saw even DOD defense contractors. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So in 2021, the legislature changed the law that would now allow for any characterization of service. Mm-hmm. Prior to the law changing, you had to have served in the U.S. military honorably or under honorable conditions. But since the law changed in 2021, you now can be a part of our program regardless of the characterization of your discharge.
I got a feeling you might see some dishonorably discharged people, right? Because if they had some mental illness or drug issues that got them discharged dishonorably 5 years ago or whatever, it's not surprising now they're in the criminal justice system.
John, you are spot on. And I think the legislature saw it as well. And the very reasons why many of these individuals were discharged were because of the substance use disorders. And so they're being re-victimized by being kicked out of the military, quite frankly, and not receiving the services they should have received or entitled to. Now they're in the civilian sector, they commit a crime, and now they're being punished. Right. But for Veterans Treatment Court.
Now, Judge, let's talk about the third criteria, which is that it has to be the mental illness and or the drug issues or alcohol issues need to be service connected. That's a little tricky, right?
Well, so the law provides for a service-related condition, whether that condition is a psychological-related condition, mental health, or substance use disorder. It can be all of them or one of them. And the state attorney's office currently makes the determination. Prior to 2021, when that law changed, the courts made the determination. And it was a two-step process. First, whether or not they were eligible based on statutory criteria to enter the program, and then two, whether or not the court, in making its balance of public safety and the needs for treatment, were going to allow them to enter the program. Now that decision is made by Susie Lopez, our state attorney, and her attorneys that are assigned to the division.
But are they pretty flexible on that, especially that third criteria? From your perspective, or DJ, you want to speak to that? I don't want to put the judge on the spot.
No, I don't see the cases that come through. That might be a better question for maybe Ms. Holt and her team of attorneys, or the criminal defense bar, because I don't know who gets arrested. I don't know of those who get arrested have a military service record.
Right.
I don't even see who has applied for the program. It's all with the state attorney's office, so it would be gross speculation on my part. Yeah. But either the state attorney's office or the public defender's office could address that question very directly.
Colonel, now, what's your feeling on that? Have you heard from defense attorneys saying, I got this guy downstairs, in front of Judge such and such, and I think he could qualify, but the state attorney's not letting him up here.
I've heard things here and there, banter back and forth, but for the most part, I agree totally with what the judge just said. By the time they do come into court, clearly these folks are, to me, they're qualified to be there. So, and we have a great working relationship as well. That's one of the, I think, and I always talk about it, the success of the program is really dependent on what I believe to be the key players within our program, starting with the judge, but in conjunction with the state attorney and the public defender or the private counsel. And then, of course, the unique aspect of our program includes the mentor program and then the VA, which really makes it apart and distinct from other programs. But I think that's what really makes us very successful.
John, if I may, I think your listeners it would be important to your listeners to appreciate just how committed our community is to helping veterans. It starts from the moment someone gets arrested. And Sheriff Chronister and the men and women in uniform at the Hillsborough County Jail, they've set up a veterans pod. So when a veteran gets arrested, literally is brought to booking, one of the first questions that is posed to them from the booking deputies is, are you in the military or have you served in the military? If they have, then they are directed to a military pod while they are waiting to see first appearance and get appointed an assistant public defender. Ms. Julianne Holt, she has dedicated an entire team of attorneys who have received specialized training on how to deal with individuals who struggle with mental health and substance use disorders, and they make initial contact. They're making application with Ms. Susie Lopez's office, her and her assistant state attorneys. They have specially assigned prosecutors who are working collaboratively with Ms. Holt's office and with the criminal defense bar at large, and then they come into our program, and we're focused on this rehabilitation model.
Well, Judge, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Somebody's listening and they say, well, my brother just went through that process, but he wasn't a veteran and he got treated, pretty lousy, blah, 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 by the sheriff's office and the court system and yada, yada, yada. Why is it that there should be special program and special direction for veterans?
Well, in your hypothetical, I would hope
that's the devil's advocate.
Yeah, no. And in the hypothetical, we're focused on veterans who have raised the right hand, who have put themselves, their families on the line in service to our country. For those sacrifices, which quite frankly, they're immeasurable, the difficulties of service. And with our program, we're able to help them as a result of the trauma that they've received in combat or as a result of their service. I think we owe it to them. We're grateful for their service, and more so than a flag being raised on Memorial, holiday or on Veterans Holiday.
Or a pat on the back.
Or
right?
a pat on the back or a yellow ribbon on the back of a car. We are bringing services to these veterans who deserve it, these veterans who need it, and we're restoring their lives. And as Colonel Reyes has pointed out, and the good men and women that work in that mentor corps, we see those benefits every day. We're saving lives. We celebrated 10 years. We also celebrated over 1,000 graduates from our program.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, maintaining the lowest recidivism rate throughout Hillsborough County's criminal justice system. In fact, the model that we have, we'd love to see it replicated in other divisions. We have this problem-solving approach. We're keeping the recidivism rate very low. So to your hypothetical, well, what about me? I'm not in the military. Yeah. Well, if we can try to focus on the root problems, whether it be mental health, whether it be substance use disorder, maybe we can help these individuals on a better path as opposed to incarcerating them.
So anybody who's listening, by the way, we're talking about Veterans Treatment Court in Hillsborough County. Veterans Treatment Courts are going on all over the country now. Many thanks to, and large thanks to good people like you two. So when you're listening, you hear Judge Shanti, and he just sounds like a really nice guy who cares about these people, which he does. But I have to tell you that that when I see him on the bench, which I used to rather regularly, once a week at least, he's still a nice guy. He's still a very decent guy. But Michael, I would say that you sit up there with some tough love. DJ, Colonel Reyes, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's no pushover. He's no,
right.
He demands Well, even attendance and punctuality, which just jumped at me. I mean, most judges,
Right.
demand it, but Michael Chanti, it's big on his list, and et cetera, et cetera.
So your point really goes to another thing that I've heard throughout the years, and that is, and I think you kind of touched on this, where some people may think, who are not as informed on the Veterans Treatment Court or its philosophy, hey, why veterans? Why do they get a kitchen pass? And the judge, articulated the reasons why they are not getting a kitchen pass. But I can tell you, again, as a mentor coordinator and a layman sitting in this court and watching what's going on, this is not an easy court to get through. In fact, we have to talk to several of our veterans that come through to basically convince them, hey, listen, this is in your best interest to go through this, because we're trying to, number one, first and foremost, get you well. That's what this is about. As a judge likes to say, it's transformational. The change is transformational. It's not a check the block. But as a result of that, several veterans that have come through over the years feel this is too hard. I'd rather just take my chances and go across the hallway.
Go to trial, take probation.
Take probation. And what they don't understand is, and we hear this every single time, is we try to tell them, hey, your vision of the world is, as long as the end of your nose here. Think what happens. Think you're gambling with your life now. Because if it's not favorable, then guess what? You're going to have that scarlet letter on you. You're going to have all kinds of repercussions against you. Things that you normally would not even think of as entitlements or benefits, you're not going to have it anymore.
Especially in the felony context. What percentage of your court attendees today, participants, are felons versus misdemeanors?
I would venture, probably about 40% are felons.
Yeah.
Now, John, to your question earlier, there are real victims in these cases.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And that's not lost on me. And at the end of the day,
domestic violence, assaults, minor assaults.
Well, there are even aggravated assaults and aggravated batteries that the state of Florida chooses to reduce charges. So even though the initial charge of an aggravated battery with a deadly weapon would not be eligible, it's at the state of Florida's discretion to reduce a charge with the victim's understanding and consent to allow that veteran to come into our program. And if they graduate, then that charge could either be dismissed, or if they come in under probation, the probation gets terminated. But my point to your listeners is there are real victims in these cases. This is a program where I set a standard and I hold them all accountable. And John, these are service members. These are soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen. They are used to structure. And that's one of the keys to this program. They understand orders. They've all been in service. They know from a senior officer or an enlisted NCO that's giving orders, they must follow them.
But I'm going to take a guess that part of their collapse in their personal life is the lack of structure, right? They get home, they're living alone, they're not, there's nobody there to tell them what to do and when to do it. And they'd been so used to that their lives perhaps start crumbling.
What an insightful comment, because that's exactly correct. And so they come to our court, and from a non-military member's perspective, like yourself, this is a lot of structure. This is the punctuality. The judge is demanding you be here on time.
Yeah, and punctuality was always hard for me when I came to your court, Michael.
But for these veterans, they get it.
Yeah.
And Colonel Reyes can speak to it, I'm certain, better than I can. We have veterans that have graduated from our program. Their case has been dismissed. They still come back to our courtroom. They sit quietly in the back and they just watch. And they just want to be a part of what we have established, and that's this brotherhood, this sisterhood, this camaraderie.
Well, and that segues to, let's talk about the mentoring program a little bit more. And by the way, have any of them graduates come back as mentors?
Yes.
Nice.
The short answer is yes.
Isn't that the ultimate circle?
Oh, absolutely. We call them peer support mentors. And we identify throughout the years, we always identify those veterans going through the program that demonstrate leadership qualities and a desire to help their fellow soldier, sailor, airman, Marine. And for those, we offer an invitation for them to go through our mentor training and qualification. And if I may say so, because the judge is here, we just recently, and it's based off of the change of the law for qualifications for types of folks that are eligible to come into the court. We just had a veteran or a participant who graduated who was an interpreter for our military. And he was wonderful, went through the program. He was wonderful and did very, very well. And it was decided upon in consultation with the judge and then the senior mentors, we're going to extend him an invitation to go through our peer mentor training. Of course, he's really excited. In fact, as we speak, he's going through the training right now. So I believe, because I keep in touch with many veteran mentor programs throughout the state, I think we're the only ones right now that are actually doing that. So we're pretty excited about that.
That's neat. So let's talk about a day in the life of a mentor. What does it mean? Does it mean, it goes and has lunch with this defendant, daily, or, just touches base once a month or something in between?
So we have rules. We put together a great program and an SOP. And then when we go
Standard operating procedure for those non-military people out there.
Right. It's kind of our guidebook for the do's and don'ts. And then we put together a mentor qualification process and a board. One of our beloved ex-senior mentors here, still retired Navy 06 SEAL, Carl Flanagan. He lives across the bay. He and I got together, and several years ago we put together this formalized qualification program. And so now everybody who's identified as a candidate has to go through this. It's a two-part process they have to go through. And then once they go through that, then they become assigned to one of my 7 teams that's headed by a senior mentor or senior officers or senior NCOs.
So as a mentor, would you have one, I don't know what you want to call them, client, no, you guys call them buddies, right? Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
So would you have
Absolutely.
one battle buddy or several battle buddies?
So that's a very interesting question. So I have to briefly give you a timeline so you can understand the scope of the program.
Sure.
So when we started in 2013, I was the first mentor, and we had 6 defendants on various minor offenses. In 6 years, June of 2019, we ballooned out to the point where the docket grew to over 225 defendants, and the mentor program grew to over 100. So we were largest in the nation. Based on COVID.
And how many mentors? I'm sorry?
Over 100 at that time.
No, mentors.
Okay. Yes, volunteer mentors.
Wow.
Right. Volunteers.
And how many defendants?
We hit a high of 225 on the docket. Okay. As a result of COVID and everything else going on, which all VTCs across the nation were impacted, we've now dropped to, what would you say, Judge?
We're in between about 75, 80 right now.
Did you go virtual during that period?
We did. We didn't lose connectivity with our veterans. So we were forced to go adopt a hybrid approach, but the mentors were able to maintain close connection with our individuals. And so as soon as we could go back in person, we did, and we didn't see much of a loss. But I wanted to go back to one of the mentors that's going through the program right now. Of course, he has since graduated. His case has been dismissed. But if it wasn't for the change in the law, he would have been spending time in jail or prison. Now, this is...
Which portion of the law?
The law that allowed for military service members and contractors.
Contractors.
Right? Because he was a contractor. He was with Special Forces. He was truly with the tip of the spear with U.S. Special Forces, and he was their interpreter. He personally worked to try to help save American lives and put his life and his family's life on the line for the sake of our nation's finest. And then, but for his own PTSD and the crime that he was alleged to have committed, the state would have been looking to put him in jail or prison. So it was just a wonderful ending to years of trauma, and we didn't turn our back on this interpreter who helped save American lives. And it was just a wonderful It's a wonderful story that he has, and I'm so happy to see that he's potentially going to become a mentor.
As an aside, my wife Lynn and I saw a beautiful movie. Did you see that movie about the interpreter dragging the soldier back? The soldier was wounded and dragging him back for days on end. I can't remember the name of it. That was a beautiful movie.
Well, Colonel Reyes and I have both served in both theaters in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we've had to rely heavily upon the services of our interpreters. And they're walking the walk, they're talking the talk, and they are exposing themselves just like American service members are.
Yeah.
Could I go back to
Please.
one of the questions you asked about what does a mentor do, basically?
Yes.
I was thinking about that. So the best way to describe a mentor in our program is they are encouragers and they are navigators. So they're encouragers in that they try to encourage the mentee that they're assigned to help them stay compliant with the court-mandated requirements, make all of their VA appointments, and then help them with other attended areas, which I do want to cover in a second.
DJ, let me jump in real quick, give people our phone number so they can call in and participate. Join us in the conversation. It's 813-239-9663. We're talking with also Colonel Michael Shanti, Colonel and Judge Michael Shanti, and Colonel DJ Reyes about Veterans Treatment Court and what that means in Hillsborough County and, frankly, all over the state and country. I'm sorry to interrupt. You were telling me about the role of mentors, and you have been leading our mentors here in Hillsborough County for more than a decade.
Yes, and so the second important role that I see for our mentors is that of being a navigator. And it's very important because it involves actually two parts. One, the understanding of the court system and the role of the key players, because that's very important. And then our role as mentors in complementing the court system, and then to the what I call the community of care network of providers. So that's the VA, and that's all of our local area medical and related type services that our network provides that we can then leverage to help that veteran. That leads me now to this next point that I think is very, very important. I'd like to give you a scenario if for your viewing audience, for your listening audience, if they could just kind of visualize this. So the veteran comes before Judge Shanti, and Judge always says, okay, you're admitted into the court. You have a mentor, okay? What can we do for you now? How can we help you? And this is what the veteran does. The veteran, if you will, takes off his or her rucksack, a big pack in the back, takes it off, turns it around, turns it upside down, empties it in front of the judge, and says, Judge, here's some of the rocks, big rocks that I have in my rucksack. And if I don't get these rocks fixed or resolved, it doesn't matter what kind of treatment I'm going to get, because these things are inhibiting my progression or my rehabilitation. Here are the 5 areas that I have seen anecdotally in this program working with veterans.
But are the veterans, are the soldiers, are the defendants willing to open up like that in open court?
It depends. But so
I can touch on that later in just a moment. Go ahead, Colonel.
Okay. So from what I have seen, and I have briefed this in multiple presentations and working it even at the state and the national level, the 5 areas I'm seeing are in order: low-cost, affordable veteran housing, viable...
Keep them off the streets. Keep them off from being homeless.
Right.
Yep.
So that's first and foremost, and that's one of the primary drives of the Secretary of the VA, of which I'm an advisory committee member on the Secretary of VA's board on that. Number 2, viable employment. And I don't mean just any minimum wage job. I mean employment like in our cooperation and collaboration with Career Source of Tampa Bay is one example. With the DVOP program, we try to integrate our veterans with that program for counseling to set them up for success for meaningful employment. Number 3, viable education. And by education, I mean not necessarily degree completion, 4-year, 2-year, but more like licenses, certifications, trade craft, so we can get them in the skills industry, immediately get them going and getting them employed. Number 4 is reliable, affordable transportation. One of the key tenets for successful participation, especially in the Veterans Treatment Court, is to appear before the court and to appear before the VA for your medical appointments.
Especially in this area that doesn't have the greatest public transportation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we deal with that as well with public. And I know the judge can talk about bus passes.
Give them bus passes.
Right, exactly. And then the fifth area that I have seen is food insecurity. And so the mentor program, and I like to say we work in between Sundays, much with our veterans. We work in conjunction with several faith-based organizations, as well as food banks and like Feeding Tampa Bay and other organizations, to make sure that we have those type of resources readily available for our veterans. Now,
So I get it. So when they come in front of you, you got these 5 major food groups, for lack of a better term, but 5 major needs that every human being needs, but they're not going to get their lives straightened out with their psychological issues or their alcohol issues unless they, have help with these other issues. That's the core of what you're saying.
Absolutely,
I think, right?
because if you don't help them with these, I like to call it level 1 of Maslow on the hierarchy of needs. If you don't identify that and help them there, they're not going to self-actualize. They won't have a chance of self-actualization or rehab or treatment. Very, very simple philosophy, but that's what we do as mentors.
And I love the fact that Judge Michael Shanti, you said, what can we do for you? What can we do to help you? So it's not just like punishment and you've got to do this and you've got to do that. The court, with all of its providers and volunteers and other associated agencies, what can we do to help you get stabilized before and while you're getting your treatment?
So the moment a veteran appears in front of me, the very first day, that's when the transformation begins. And it starts with the court, myself, trying to break down those traditional barriers. Oftentimes, these veterans have appeared in criminal courts before. This is not the first for them. And there's intimidation, there's trepidation, they're scared, they're nervous.
Skepticism sometimes.
Who's going to want to trust the criminal justice system, right? So I'm well aware of that. We all are well aware of that. So trying to restart the dialogue focused on healing. We do that by sometimes anecdotally, I will share my own experiences just to let them know they're not alone. One of the things I love that you do in there, because I can see why, okay, is that they don't just sit through their own case and come and go. As I recall, they get there early and you're making them watch all the cases at all levels of progress. So I assume part of the reason is so they can see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, right? John, absolutely. There's many reasons why. It's part of the best practices. And even though early on you were like, Judge Shanti.
Never dawned on me. It just dawned on me just now.
Well, so we do what we do for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's because it's proven, it's best practices, it's national best practice standards for problem-solving courts. So
they should do that in every single courtroom.
Well,
you should have to sit there for 3 hours so you can see the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Right.
Well, so what we have incorporated in my 7, 8 years overseeing the court is this best practices. In fact, that's why our court in 2019 was recognized by the United States Congress as the model problem-solving veterans treatment court.
Hillsborough County.
Wow. In 2019. And so Colonel Reyes was up at the White House not too long ago and being recognized as on behalf of our court, and he's just doing wonderful things. And I'll let him speak to expanding this model into the federal criminal justice system and into our Native American court system. That Colonel Reyes could speak to another hour about what he's doing to bring awareness of these veteran treatment courts.
So it's not inherently, I would have thought it's in the federal system. These are federal veterans. What's the deal with that, Colonel?
Okay, okay, so I'll try to compress this.
Yeah. And by the way, give us a call if you have any questions or comments. We're talking about Veterans Treatment Court. This is Down and Dirty. I'm John Dingfellow. The number is 813-239-9663. If you're enjoying the conversation, that's great. Sit back and enjoy it. But if you want to join in, give us a call, 239-9663. Yes, sir.
So the wonderful thing about our program is that, and I mentioned this earlier, is that it has provided us a platform to really look over the horizon, try to be proactive, try to see, okay, what's the next thing that's going to be approaching us or challenging us. And one of the things that we came up with collectively is, well, wait a minute, this is a great program we have at the state and county level, but surely there are veterans with federal charges. What's going on? And so I did a little research, and in conjunction with the advisory committee that I currently sit on at the U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs level, I realized in short order there are up to 12 federal level veteran treatment courts across the nation. And I've done my research, and I've talked to several folks in D.C. And so I reached out to all 12 of the magistrate judges. 7 of them personally wrote back to me. Of the 7, there are 5 that confirmed they do have a federal level type of veterans court.
But we're talking about out of hundreds of federal courts across the country.
So specifically out of
5 or 7, yeah.
Out of 94 U.S. congressional districts.
There you go.
Circuits, there are 12, of which I know for a fact there are 5, because one of them, they told me they don't have it. They have a reentry program that involves veterans. And then the 7th judge that called me said, we're trying to still set it up. So what we've done here, and for your listening audience, I think they would like this. 2 years ago, one of our federal magistrate judges here, the Honorable Anthony Porcelli, reached out to me through our second VTC judge, Judge Greg Holder, and he said, I've got a veteran with federal charges. I don't want to throw him in prison. I know he's been diagnosed with PTSD, but I don't have a VTC. Is
Porcelli, is he a veteran himself?
No.
No, okay.
He's not, but he's well aware, very cognizant of our Tampa Veterans Treatment Court. So he asked me to appear before the court. This was 2 years ago. Asked me to appear before the court to inform the court of our program. And then he would make his decision. I informed the court of the Veterans Treatment Court. And then he asked me, would you consider volunteering your time as a mentor for this veteran and to connect the veteran with the VA and the community services, everything you do in the Tampa Veterans Treatment Court, but I have to retain federal level jurisdiction. And I said, of course.
Well, okay. And for our listeners, geographically, we're not talking about a world apart. We're talking about 4 blocks away.
Right.
Federal court's 4 blocks away from the circuit court, but it sounds like it could be Mars, right?
Well, and DJ, because that time is limited, he's also trying to expand it to the Native American court systems too. So, like I said, he could spend an hour or more talking about
how did it work out on that gentleman 2 years ago?
So he was already sentenced to 2 probations. He had 2 probation sentences by federal Judge Barber, and he's successful. I still mentor him, even though he's not in court anymore. And he's got all the things that we do in our program. He's got employment, housing, transportation, service dog. He's even done community service with me. I'm now mentoring a second veteran who, incidentally, is going to be sentenced next Tuesday, the 2nd of July. And WFTS ABC is going to cover that after he gets done with his sentencing.
Very cool.
Because they're going to talk about the pilot program we're doing and the federal level veterans treatment.
And a shout out to Judge Tom Barber, who was one of your cohorts in circuit court, Michael,
right?
And then went over to federal court. So he was probably very aware of what you and Holder and Reese had been doing.
Yeah.
Real quick on the Native American. Mm-hmm. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So real quickly, we saw another issue there where Native American veterans, and a lot of them are combat veterans that live on the reservation, get in trouble with the law. It could be state level, could be federal level. Many of them go through what's known as the U.S. tribal court system. Tied to the U.S. tribal court system is the Indian healthcare system. And what we have found out anecdotally is that many of these veterans in the system, they get that medical treatment, but they don't have access to the VA, or they don't know about the VA, or they're not in the VTC. So my current effort with some other folks is to broker the 2 systems. I'm currently working with the Seminole Tribe of Florida here, the Hopi Tribe, and the Navajo Nation, both found in the northeast corner of Arizona.
Are you Native American, by the way? Or?
No, I'm Asian Pacific Islander, but
okay,
I'm a veteran.
You care.
But
all right, Michael.
No, I was just.
One thing we didn't talk about was the continuum of care, or the different, what are they called, the different phases that you do require, and how long that takes people to go through. Some of them do have to scratch their head and say, wow, that's a long time and a lot of work for my misdemeanor case, so I could see where that could be a challenge.
Well, as minimum time is 9 months. So the 5-phase program, again, is part of that best practices approach. Our Veterans Treatment Court program early on didn't have a phased concept, but over time the program has matured. And now there's a 5-phase program. It's benchmarks of stability and making strides in treatment. So for those veterans who come into our program, they can spend a minimum of as little as 9 months. We have veterans that have been there for a few years. So it just depends on their progress. We closely monitor participants. But I wanted to get back to a question that you had asked earlier about, how to connect with veterans. And I think that's so important. As a judge who has served, it's very important that the veteran who appears in front of me understands that we've walked in, Colonel Reyes and the mentors, myself as the judge, we've walked in their shoes. We've been in combat before, and oftentimes a barrier to treatment is you can't relate to my experience. And I hear that from the VA. Of course, we work closely with the VA, and they have to work months. Sometimes they're never able to overcome that hurdle of being able to relate. And in our court, I certainly can. Colonel Reyes and I, we first...
Do you open up, Michael, and let them know how and why you can relate?
I do.
I know that because we're friends, but...
I do, because I want them to understand it's not a sign of weakness to show your vulnerabilities. It's a sign of strength. Mm-hmm. And so if I, as the judge, am sharing with them my own struggles after service, then I think they're more able to open up, not necessarily to me. I'm trying to create the safe space for them to feel comfortable, to feel safe in our courtroom. So when they go to that therapeutic environment over at the VA, they're now more comfortable. And Colonel Reyes can share with you over the many, many years, it's working. We oftentimes, just this past Friday, we had a veteran finally open up about his addiction. And he's been denying it, been fighting it, and he finally is like, Judge, I need help.
Wow.
And so we're there, again, as I've been saying for years, we're not a court of punishment. We're a court of rehabilitation. It's a labor of love for all of us, because at some point we've all been in their shoes.
Now, sometimes do they go into a residential treatment program like the Cove, or I don't know if the VA has a residential treatment program?
Yeah, the VA has been wonderful. I must say, we have VJOs, Veteran Justice Outreach Coordinators, that are assigned to our courtroom. They give real-time connectivity to all the wonderful treatment providers, mental health care workers, substance use disorder workers at the VA. They do have housing. They just opened a 30-bed place out there off of
Temple Terrace.
Temple Terrace. 30 beds,
nice.
8 of which are for females. They have another location in Hillsborough County that they expect to open with an additional 30 beds in 2026. I was just briefed maybe 2 weeks ago by Dr. Monahan over there. So VA is doing yeoman's work. Colonel Reyes is a part of his own initiative. I'll let him speak to that about veteran housing.
I don't know how many hours in the day you have, Colonel, but you're amazing. Both of you guys are amazing, but what you do as a volunteer is fantastic. I wanted to ask you about women. Because, somebody might think, oh, this is just, veterans, this is just men. But I got a feeling, as I recall, seeing some women in the court. What percentage would you guess?
Well, we're probably about 15% females, but they are the most vulnerable. And so we surge resources. Colonel Reyes, again, can speak to the housing issue, but the VA is well aware. Like I said, 8 of those beds, they're open right now for services for women in particular.
Nice.
Right. So to get to the housing, if you recall, I mentioned that as first and foremost of the 5 areas. So there's several initiatives that are going on. I'm not privy to get into the precise details, but I'm working with a company right now based out of New York that's in the industry of low-cost affordable housing. And we have identified a couple areas in Tampa and in Hillsborough County to build low-cost affordable housing. So we're pretty excited about that. So more to follow on that. We may have something as as early as next year for the housing piece. The other thing I want to mention is on the healthcare. So one of the things that really help us and make us very successful in treating our veterans is, in addition to leveraging the VA has a community of care program. So basically, the VA can actually leverage what's in the community to help. And one of the companies that really supports us and has a wonderful program, if I may put a plug in for them, is Riverside Recovery of Tampa Bay. And they have what's known as the Valor program for our veterans, for substance use and associated comorbidities such as mental health.
I've driven by that. It's close to my house right there.
It is. It's right off of MLK and River.
And if I may, so for those veterans who are not eligible for VA services, remember that law changed. So you could be dishonorably discharged. They would not necessarily be eligible for VA services. So we work with our entire community, whether it's Phoenix House, whether it's the Cove, whether it's Tampa Crossroads, whether it's even with mental health services at Grace Point, quite frankly. So we work full spectrum trying to help these veterans cope, struggle, overcome, heal from their difficulties.
You know, we didn't get a phone call today, but that's okay. We do have an email from a gentleman down in Sarasota. It looks like he is interested in mentoring. He's a veteran. I think it looks like he was with the Navy. And so what would he do? Would he do they have a program in Sarasota County? Would he reach out to VTC down there, or maybe take the drive and join you here? What do you suggest, DJ?
I wouldn't recommend he take the drive.
We would love to have him come to Hillsborough County.
But that's a little bit of a stretch. So two things. He can contact Sarasota County. They do have a Veterans Treatment Court there. Just get, it's right on the website. Or he can even contact me, and I can give you...
Why don't you give them your website?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. Generically, any veteran who wants to be a mentor, how do they reach you?
They can reach me on our website. They can on the drop-down menu, but the website is www.hillsborough-county-mentors.org.
Okay.
And if they go right to that, they'll see our 3-minute public service announcement video, and then a drop-down. There's a contact me box. They can write it in. I receive a lot of texts from candidates, from folks who want to be mentors.
And are you still at what'd you say, about 100 mentors?
No, right now we are at just over 50, if I'm not mistaken.
But your total grouping dropped from a couple hundred to, 75?
Yeah, since the law changed, we saw a drop in participants. But as far as our mentors, we're certainly seeing a 1-to-1, maybe 1-to-2 ratio. Right. But to your listener, boy, we would love to have that veteran thank him or her for their service and have them join our program. As Colonel Reyes pointed out, they do their best work in between court dates. So they don't necessarily would have to drive all the way to Hillsborough County. No, it's really just a phone call and an occasional visit with the veteran. So that person could certainly serve as a veteran in Hillsborough County. So I just wanted them to know.
So we were talking about women earlier, and I just want to, perhaps we'll wrap up with that. We've only got a few more minutes, but you mentioned vulnerability. I remember our good friend Sarah Romeo and her organization,
Athena House,
right? Athena, and another organization over there. But anyway, that they were focusing on women veterans being homeless, and that's severely vulnerable issue. Are you seeing that with some of the women veterans that are in front of you?
Yeah, absolutely. And to former state representative, she was wonderful in helping establish that Athena House. We relied heavily on that program, and it was a very sad day. I know it was for Miss Romeo, Sarah Romeo, when Athena House had to shutter its doors. We saw a significant...
Was that the one over on Columbus?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, in fact, I was there for the grand opening, so we were just really excited for that many years ago. But the VA has filled the breach, and efforts that Colonel Reyes and our community are pulling together to help address female homelessness. The VA has individual counseling sessions for women, because usually these counseling sessions are co-ed, they're in group. The VA has grown more sensitivity to that. They have individual counseling for our female veterans, and of course, providing the housing that we desperately need.
Well, listen, gentlemen, this has been a great conversation. I so appreciate your past service. Well, Michael, you're still in the...
Yeah, I'm still serving.
You're still serving in the military. DJ, Colonel Reyes, we appreciate your current service. These gentlemen have been running the Veterans Treatment Court here in Hillsborough County. If you want to find out more information about Veterans Court, I guess you go to the Hillsborough County website and drop down to Veterans Court, right?
Yeah, 13th Judicial Circuit.
13th Judicial Circuit. Well, we do appreciate all you do in the community. And